What is up, everyone? How are you guys doing? Welcome to the day 3 of the Devsnest Frontend Bootcamp, and today we'll be getting started with JavaScript. So let me know how are you guys doing in the comments. Okay, so have you guys been able to follow along so far, the first and the second day? Were you able to get the portfolio to the same level as we had left it off the last time? Let me know in the comments. Well, I'm doing good as well. Thanks for asking. Somebody mentioned in the chat that they're hearing an echo. Is that the case with everyone? All right. Yeah. So I'm great to hear that you guys are working on the portfolio, and Herman says that he even modified it a bit. So do share whatever you're learning on LinkedIn or social media. Tag me and Devsnest, um, and share the work that you guys are doing. It would be really great to see you guys applying whatever you have learned. And yeah, there are a lot of things that we'll be building in the future. This is just the start. Okay. So today is an interesting topic, JavaScript. Um, we'll be learning the basics today, like what the language has to offer, and then we'll be moving on to more complex stuff starting tomorrow. Okay. Today is just letting you know like what is JavaScript, what it allows us to do, what is possible, different constructs of the language. Um, how would you be able to program using JavaScript? Some basics. That is the idea for today. Okay. Yeah, just let's wait just a little bit more and then we'll just start with today's session. And what have you guys been up to in the weekend? How did it go? Yeah, so I guess some of you are busy with college tasks. One of you is writing CSS is frustrating. Yeah, it is frustrating when you don't understand it. So keep on practicing. It will make sense to you. It will definitely make sense. Just it will take some time, but it will definitely make sense. Just keep at it. All right, so let's begin with today's session now. And as you know, the focus of today is JavaScript. So JavaScript allows us to make the website interactive. It allows us to, take and consider the user's input and make changes to the website accordingly. So let's look at how we can do that. So I have my VS Code open here, and you can see that there is just some boilerplate HTML code. So let's look at an example how JavaScript allows us to make the website interactive. So in order to add JavaScript within our website, we can make use of something known as the script tag. Okay, and what we will do over here is we will add a h1 tag, and I will just say hi. And what I want to do is I want to display my name, and I want to accept the value of this name from the browser. Okay, so let's give this an ID. Let's call it as name. All right, so I have already added a script tag over here which allows us to write JavaScript. Okay, so we will declare a variable, let's call it name, and we will make use of the document object which gives us access to this entire document. And within that we want to get the element with the ID name, so we make use of this function. If you're not understanding what I'm doing right now, I'm just giving you a taste of JavaScript. We'll be learning all of these things in detail uh, in the upcoming sessions. Is just to show in an example of interactivity. Okay. Um, Actually, wait, hang on a sec. So what I want to do is I want to accept the name, right? So what I will say is I'll make use of this function prompt, which accepts a message. So I will say enter your name, right? And once the user has entered the name, it will be stored in this variable name. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to show the value that the user has entered and add it to this element. Okay, so far we were typing all the values ourselves. In this case, we will ask the browser to show us a dialog, and in that dialog we will enter that value. So let's do that now. So in order to access this element, we will make use of the document API, and we will say get element by ID. The name of the ID is name, right? So sorry, the value of the ID is name. So we want to get this particular element, and within that we want to modify the text content, and we want to set it to the value which will be stored in this variable. So we will just assign it the variable name. All right, let's save this. And now I will open this document over here. So you can see that it shows us this message, enter your name. So I will enter my name. All right. Now when I press OK, the value will be stored, and you can see that it is showing us the text hi Gaurav. Okay. And if we inspect the element, you can see we have the h1 tag, then we have the text hi, and the span which was empty earlier, it has this text Gaurav over here. Okay, and so this is how JavaScript allows us to interact with the document and modify the document based on the based on something which the user does with the website, right? So this is something which JavaScript allows us to do. Now, moving ahead further, let's look at the basics of what this language has to offer us. Okay, so what we will be looking at first are the data types. All right, by the way, for your knowledge, if when we write two forward slashes like this, this is known as a comment in JavaScript. And right now I have opened the developer tools and I am inside the console tab. So what this tab allows us to do is execute JavaScript right here. Okay, so we don't need to include any script tag or anything. We can just play around over here with JavaScript. Okay, this is something which is provided by the browser. All right. And yeah, if you guys are wondering what an API is and all of those things, we'll be covering that in the upcoming sessions. Don't worry, we will cover all of those topics. All right. Even if you don't understand the code which I just wrote right now, it's fine. We'll be learning what all of those APIs are, what are those methods and everything. All right. Okay. All right. So as we said, we will be looking at the different data types which are available to us in JavaScript. So one of the widely used data types is a number, right? So for example, you have something like 12 or something like 12.4. All of these are considered as numbers. In some languages we have something like an int to represent an integer, a float to represent decimal point values, but in JavaScript the broad category for this is a number. All right, then anything which is a text, for example Gaurav or Devsnest, any sort of textual information, that is known as a string. All right, and um, we also have something which is known as a boolean. So a boolean data type supports only two values, true or false. All right, these are the two values which are possible for the boolean data type. And let's see how we can, so far we have just seen like how we are, what are the different data types. Suppose I want to process these values and store them, right? For the purpose, JavaScript allows us to define variables, right? Variable is something within which you can store a value. So the way you create a variable is that you can make use of this declaration type, for example var, right? And suppose I want to store my name, right? So I will say var name equals Gaurav. All right, so this will create a since I just give me a sec. Since we are already using this variable name over here, it's not allowing me to do that. So I'll just call it var first name equals Gaurav. All right. So we have created a variable first name and it is storing this value Gaurav. All right. And we're making use of this equal to sign to assign this value to this variable. Okay. And if I just type first name over here, it just holds this value inside this. So basically variables allow us to store values, and in JavaScript variables are of dynamic nature. What that means is suppose I have a variable, by the way, this is known as a declaration type. This is the older way of declaring a variable. Okay, the newer ways are let, and for example let me create a variable, say foo. Okay, initially it is equal to a string. Okay, for example devs nest. Now I was talking about that in JavaScript the variable is it's dynamic in nature, the data type is dynamic in nature, right? So initially it might hold a value which is of string type. Then later on, if I say foo equals no 10, right? So foo is then assigned the value 10. So it changed from a string to a number. And suppose I want to hold a boolean value, so I can even assign foo to true, for example. Okay, so now foo holds a boolean value. So what this basically means is that the type of value that a variable holds, it is not fixed in JavaScript. It is dynamic in nature. Okay, a variable, once it is assigned a value, it does not remain fixed to that value. You can assign it a string, you can assign it a number, or you can assign it a boolean value. All right. And the other type of variable declaration is const. So for example, I want to create a variable which whose value cannot be changed, right? So for that purpose we use the const declaration type. Okay, so for example, I want that the value of a remains 10. Okay, and so now if I try to do a equals 12, since this is of const type, it will throw this error at me. It is saying assignment to constant variable. Okay, this is something which is not possible, so it is giving us an error. So whenever I want to whenever I want that the value, or I know that the value might change over time, I can make use of the let type of declaration. So it allows us to modify the value and update its value over a period of time. All right, so far we have looked at a few of the data structures and data types which are available in JavaScript. How we can create a variable. A variable allows us to store values, and the different types of variables that we can create. A var type of variable, declaration type of let, and a constant. There were some issues with the var declaration type. That is why the recommended way these days is let and const, and we look at these issues when we learn about scoping. Okay, but for the time being, you just need to know, like, these are the three different ways by which you can create a variable. And it is preferred to use let for values which might change over a period of time, and a const or a constant type for values which we do not want to change over a period of time. Okay, and then what we will do is, let's look at a couple of more data types. So for example, let me create a variable called baz. Okay, you can see that it is, if we examine the value of baz right now, so it is undefined. So by default, whenever you're creating a variable and you're not assigning it a value using the assignment or equal to operator, its initial value is undefined. So this is another data type which is available in JavaScript. And suppose some variable, say baz, I'm setting it to ABC, for example, and I want to indicate that I did some operation, I did something with this variable. Whatever was its intended usage, that was done, and now I want to indicate that this variable is now empty. So what I can do is, I can make use of another variable type known as null, which explicitly indicates that this variables now holds nothing. Okay, so what I can do is, I can say baz equals to null. All right, so this this is one type when we have not assigned any value, so it is set to undefined. And whenever we want to explicitly say that now it doesn't hold any value, then we can assign it to null. So that is another data type which is available in JavaScript. Then as you're looking at numbers, okay, so for example, you can know that if I do 1 plus 1, it gives me 2, right? It is doing the addition operation. Suppose I do 1 minus the character a, or the string value of a, right? So this is not a valid number, right? You can't subtract one from, you can't, you basically cannot do something like this. So it returns another data type known as NaN, or not a number. Okay, so this is another data type which is available to us. And there are a few other data types as well, such as symbol. Okay, and big int, which allows us to hold large integers. But this is something that we will not look at right now. I have just covered a few of the basic data types and the ones which we will be coming across quite often. Okay, now all the data types that we have looked so far, these are known as primitive data types or predefined data types. These are coming from the JavaScript language. All right. Suppose you wanted to create your own custom data type. For that purpose, we have something known as objects. Okay. So what objects allow us to do is we can define our own custom data types over here. So custom data types can be created combining one or more primitive data types. So for example, I want to create a data type or a data structure which holds some information related to a person. Okay, so for example, let me create an object person, right? And in order to create an object, I make use of this curly braces, opening curly braces. And over here, let me create a property. Okay, this is known as the key first name. And we will set the first name to, for example, John. Okay. And then we want to create another property known as last name. And we want to set the last name to Doe. And suppose we want to store the age of this person, which is of a numerical or a number, right? So for example 30. Okay, and then we close this curly bracket. So this is basically creating an object, right? If we look at this person, this is a custom data type, and it is having a key and a value. This is the name of the key and this is its value. And this is a string data type. This was of a number, and this is once again a string. Suppose I want to access this this value from the person object. What I will do is I will make use of the dot operator. So I will say person. Okay, and of the person, I want to know the person's first name. So I will say person dot first name. It will return the value John. All right, so this is how you access the individual properties within an object. Okay, so if I want to access last name, I will say person dot last name, and similarly for age, person dot age. All right, so we kind of created a custom data type using all of the primitive data types like number, string. And suppose I want to add another property within this person object. So I will say person dot knows or is learning front end. For example, I can set this to true. Okay, so if we examine the person object now within the console, we can see that is learning front end has been set to true. So we have added another property which is of Boolean type. Okay, so this is another data type or a custom data type which we can create using primitive data types. Now the next thing that we will be looking at is operators in JavaScript. So I'll just use the abbreviated form JS for JavaScript. Okay, so so one of the most common operators is the addition operator or the plus sign, right? So let's look at some of its use cases. So suppose I have two variables. Let num1 equals 10. Okay, and I have let num2 equals 20, and I want to add these two numbers. So what I can say, num1 plus num2. Okay, and it is giving me the result as 30. Then there is something known as the increment or decrement operator. So for example, I want to add the value of num1 by 1. So what I can say is num1 plus plus. All right, Once this statement has been executed, and now if I look at the value of num1, it is giving me the value as 11. So what this means is num1 equals num1 plus 1. Okay, instead of typing this, we can just say num1 plus plus. All right, and similarly, if I do plus plus num1, it will basically perform the addition right there and add the value by 1. So you can directly see it is showing us the value 12. Okay, so this is known as pre-increment and this is known as post-increment. So if you see the difference, that when I wrote num1 plus plus, it returned the value as 10, but when I actually first it basically executed the statement and then it incremented the value. All right, so initially we see the value as 10, and when I actually re-examine it, it is showing us the value 11. And over here, first it will increment the value and store the result. So here we directly see the value as 12. Okay, both of them are doing the same thing, is just the order in which the addition happens is different. Okay, all right. Similarly, instead of writing num1 equals num1 plus 1, there is something known as the shorthand operator. So what we can do is we can just write num1 plus equals 1. Okay, so it's the same thing, right? Instead of saying num1 is equal to num1 plus 1, we can just say num1 plus equals 1. Both of them are equivalent. Okay, so we saw all the operations that we can do with the plus operator. We can do similar operations with the minus or the subtraction operator as well. So we can just do like num2 minus num1, right? So which was like 14 minus 20, so it's giving 20 minus 14, so it's giving us the value 6, right? So and we have similar operations for subtraction as well. Like for example, if I want to do num1 minus minus, I want to reduce the value by 1. So if I examine the value of num1 now, it is equal to 13. Similarly, you can do minus minus num1 and so on. So all of the combinations which were possible with addition are also possible with subtraction. Okay, we can multiply two numbers. So num1 equals 5. I'm just doing a reassignment. We can do a reassignment. We can change the value, and num2 equals to 2, for example. And if I want to multiply two numbers, I can just do num1 into num2. All right, so basic additional, multiplication, division, and subtraction is possible in JavaScript using all of these operators. And like we have shorthand notation for addition, we have it for subtraction, multiplication, and division as well. Now let's look at something known as type conversion. Okay, which basically means that we will be converting from one data type to another. So here also some of the what we will do, suppose we let's take an example. Suppose I want to convert num1 into a string. So since this everything, one thing that you need to remember, that everything in JavaScript is an object. So whenever we wanted to access something on the object, we made use of the dot operator, right? So we want to convert this number into a string. So what we will do is we'll call the toString function on this, and you can see it as once I execute this statement, right, this will convert this 5, which was a number, into a string. So the representation of a string can either be double quotes or single quotes. Both are fine, right? You can have AB, whatever, this text like this as well as like this. Both of them are strings. So we can see that it has converted this number into a string. And similarly, suppose we have a string which holds a numerical value, and I want to convert this into a integer or back to a number. I can make use of this function known as parse int. Okay, and it accepts a string, so it has been converted back to an integer or a number. All right, so this is something um uh, this is known as type conversion, converting from one data type to another. Similarly, I can say false dot to string, so it will convert the boolean into a string type. And we can do the reverse as well. So suppose I have um, suppose I want to see that I want to convert 0 to boolean, right? So what I can do is I can say boolean. It's a built-in data type in JavaScript, and we are making use of the boolean object and passing it the value 0, like this. When I execute this, it is giving me it is returning me the value as false. Okay, and suppose if I give it the value 1, it is returning me the value true. Okay, since boolean holds only two possible values, true or false, 0 is considered as a false value, so it is returning me the result as false. Anything other than 0, for example 1, 10, 2, 3, 4, okay, anything other than 0, it is considered as a true value or a truthy value. And some values are considered as false values. So for example, if I pass an empty string, okay, it has no character, so this is known as an empty string. So when I pass that to the boolean object, it is giving me the value as false. If I have a string with some value, for example dev, okay, or just a, or even if there's a space, all right, it will give us the value as true. Okay, so this is known as type conversion. All right, now let's look at so this is something which was happening explicitly, or it was very clear that we are calling certain functions which are allowing us to convert the value from one type to another, right? um, so let's look at something which is known as type coercion. Okay, what this basically means is that when the code is being executed, depending on the type of values which are available, there might some implicit conversion might happen, or some automatic conversion of the value might happen. So let us consider an example. Suppose I have this string John is John is of example John's age is, okay, this is a string, right? And I make use of the plus operator and I add the number 30 to it. So you can see that it is giving us the string John's age is 30, right? This was a string and this was a number. So when I made use of the plus operator, it automatically converted this number into a string, and then using the plus operator it concatenated both of those strings, okay, or joined both of those strings together. So whenever you combine two strings together, that process is known as concatenation, and the operator which allows us to do that is the plus operator. So it's not just that you can use the plus operator for adding numbers, you can also use the plus operators to concatenate two strings. Okay, so for example I have a string str1, okay, which equals ABC, and I have another string str2 which equals def. All right, so if I do str1 plus str2, it will concatenate both of these strings. Okay, and the same thing was happening over here, but since this was a number, for JavaScript implicitly or automatically converted this into a string and then performed this concatenation operation. All right, now similarly, suppose we do something like this: 1 plus 1. So it is actually giving us the result as 1 and 1. Okay, because it converted this into a string as well. That is why you have 1 placed besides 1 and not 1 plus 1 equals 2. If you want to do something like that, what we will have to do is make use of the parse int function. We give it the string 1, and then when we do addition of 1, it is giving us the value as 2. But here it performed a string concatenation. Now similarly, if I do 1 minus 1, what do you think the output is going to be? Any guesses? You can let me know in the chat. Okay, so there is no such thing known as deconcatenation. So what it will do is it will convert this into an integer or a number. Okay, so if you see right now, when we do 1 minus 1, it is giving us the value as 0. All right, so the plus operator implicitly converts things into strings. It is the case majority of the times, and you cannot remove strings as such. So what it is trying to do is, it thinks that okay, you want to subtract two numbers, right? So it will try to implicitly or automatically convert this back to a number. All right, so that is why we're getting the result as 0. Similarly, if I do 2 minus 1, it is giving me 1. All right, so this is something that you just need to keep in mind. Why it works like this is best known to the creator of JavaScript. All right. And not a number will come because I guess it is clear to you now, right? If we do, for example, 2 minus a, okay, it is giving us not a number, because fine, it was able to automatically convert this into a number, but a, it cannot convert into a number, right? Because a is a string, so it's not possible to do that. So that is why it is giving us this not a number as a result. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So I'll just repeat it quickly once. So whenever we are doing an addition, okay, using type coercion, it will automatically convert this into a string. All right. If we're doing a subtraction, it thinks that we need to subtract two numbers, so it will automatically convert both of these, the values on the left and the right, into numbers. If it is successfully able to do that, we will get the result as subtraction of two numbers. Otherwise we will get something like otherwise we'll get the result as not a number. Okay, when it's not able to convert either one of those values into a number, it will return not a number. All right, I hope it is clear to you guys now. Okay, somebody is asking me continuously, what is the result of 1 minus of minus 1, like this, right? So since you have the minus operator over here, it tried to convert this into a number, right? And minus of minus would be plus, so it is giving us the value as 2. Okay, if you do something like 1 plus minus 1, it is giving us 1 dash 1. Okay, I hope it is clear to you guys what's the difference between the two. Okay, uh, so so there are two ways by which a data type might be converted from one type to another. When you specify it explicitly, it is known as type conversion. When it happens automatically or implicitly, it is known as type coercion. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next topic, which is conditional operators. All right. So, give me a sec. Suppose we want to check if, so let's examine the values of num1. So right now num1 equals 5 and num2 equals 2. Okay. Suppose I want to know if num1 is greater than num2. What I will do is I will make use of the greater than sign and write num1 greater than num2. If this is true, okay, is 5 greater than greater than 2, this statement is correct, right? So it is giving us the result as true. Okay, so the result of a condition is always a boolean value. Either it is true or it is false. So this is where the boolean data type becomes handy. Okay, this is where it is used quite a lot to store the result of some conditional operation. Suppose I want to check if num1 is less than num2, which is false, right? Since 5 is not less than 2, so this condition is false. All right, so using these operators greater than, less than, we can we can define conditions. Okay, and the result of a condition is always a boolean type. Either it's true or it's false. Only two values are possible. Okay, and similarly there is a combination. So suppose we want to check if num1 is greater than or equal to num2, right? So since 5 is greater than or equal to 2, it is giving us the value true. Similarly, we have less than equal to, right? So this is false. And suppose we want to check if num1 equals num2. Okay, is num1 equal to num2? All right, so this is false. This is to check if both the numbers are equal or not. So for example, if I set num1 num2 to 5, okay, and now if I do num1 equals num2, it is giving us the result as true. Okay, since both the numbers are now equal, it is giving us the result as true. All right, and using this, we have something known as control, or not control, let's say flow statements. Okay, so what we can do is we can write we can create branches. All right, so let's look at an example of how we can do. So either one set of statement will get executed or another set of statement will get executed depending on the result of the condition. So the first way of creating flow statements or branches is the if else statement. All right, so if and else are keywords within JavaScript. It basically means keywords basically means they are part of the grammar of JavaScript. Okay, these words are coming from JavaScript. They have a special meaning within JavaScript. All right. So I make use of this if. I type the keyword if, and within these parentheses I specify a condition. Okay, so for example, what we will do is we'll just say num1 is 5, num2, let me reassign it to 2 once again. All right, and now we have if num1 is greater than num2 is greater than num1. All right, what we want to do is we want to print in the console, which is this tab. So in order to print something in the console, we have this function available, console.log. Okay, and we will just print a string over here which will say num or rather let's make use of the concatenation operator. Num2 plus is greater than plus num1. Okay, and then we have closed this if statement. Okay, this opening curly braces indicates a block. So we have opened a block, and within a block you can have one statement, and this entire thing collectively is known as a statement. You can have one or more statements within a block. Okay, this curly bracket allows us to define a block. What a block is, we will go into details in the coming lessons. All right, and similarly the else part, okay, which basically means that num2 is not greater than num1, right? So we will say console.log num2 plus, we're using the concatenation, is not greater than, and once again we're using the concatenation num1. Okay, so we want this statement to be executed if this condition is false. All right, so if you specify the condition over here, if the result of this condition is true, it will execute this statement, else or otherwise it will execute this statement. All right, so this is what if else allows us to do. So let's execute this now. So num2 is having the value as 2 and num1 equals 5, right? So is 2 greater than 5? What do you think is going to be the result of this? Let me know in the comments. It's not necessary to give these spaces. This is just to enhance the readability. Otherwise, the digits would be sticking to the text. All right. Okay, so you guys are correct. It will execute the else statement and it will print 2 is not greater than 5. All right. And similarly, let us do one thing. Let's just say num1 is equal to 1 now, and let me re-execute the same statement once again. All right, so in this case it will say 2 is greater than 1, right? Num2 is greater than 1. Since this condition was true this time, after we modified num1 to 1, it is printing the if block. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you guys. This is one way, if and else. There is another variation of this known as if, else, if, and else. Okay, we use all three of these together. So let's see how we can do that. So we will consider the same example. So we have this, and over here what we will do is if num2 is less than num1. Okay, we just added this else if block over here, and once again we specify the condition over here. We open the curly brackets, and then we want to say num2 is, for example, now we just want to say is not greater than, or we can say is less than num1. Okay, and if we look at these two conditions, here we're saying num2 is greater than num1, and here we're saying num2 is less than num1. If both of these conditions are false, right, the only alternative that remains is that both the numbers have to be equal, right? So that is where we make use of the else block. All right, and here we will just say console.log both the numbers are equal. All right, okay, and we use this semicolon to indicate the end of a statement or to terminate a statement. All right, so we can add another statement over here. For example, console.log this is another statement. Okay, so like I said, within a block you can have one or more statements. Okay, by more I mean 2, 10, 20, whatever. All right, let's execute this code. So since num2 is greater than 1, it is going inside the first condition and printing this. Let's make a slight modification. Num1 equals 5 once again, and if we run the same code again, right, it is giving us 2 is less than num1, right? So it this time it went inside this block and it executed this statement. Okay, now if I say num2 equals 5, okay, so num1 is also equal to 5 and num2 is equal to 5, it will come over here, it will check okay, is 5 greater than 5? So this condition is false. So then it will then come over here, is 5 less than 5? So even this condition is false. So what remains is this else part, right? So it will come over here, and then let's execute this piece of code once again, and it should print both of these statements. Okay, so I'll do that now. I'll execute this, and you can see both the numbers are equal. This is another statement. So it executed this piece of block. So is it clear to you guys? If else. Okay, if this is true, it will execute this statement. If this condition is false, it will try to execute, it will check the next condition which is provided using else if, and if even that is false, it will come to the else block. So if you want to specify multiple conditions, we want to check different set of criteria, you can make use of if, else if, and else kind of statements. Okay, so we saw the basic variation. If the condition is true, we come here, otherwise if it's false, we come here. But suppose we want to add multiple conditions, then we can make use of if, else if, and if both of those are false, it will come into the third part. If one of them are true, it will just go inside the block which is true. All right, okay. Okay, since we were looking at operators, right, so far we have looked at plus, minus, multiplication, addition, and division. There is something known as the ternary operator. All right, so the syntax for this is question mark. So suppose I want to convert this if else, this one, the first one, I want to write this using the ternary operator. So even the ternary operator allows us to define conditions. So suppose I want to write this condition num1 greater than num2. Okay. So what I will do is I will say first let's correct num1 is 5 and num2 is equal to 2. Okay. And suppose I want to check if num1 is greater than num2. Okay. If this condition is true, I want to print num1 plus is greater than plus. Actually, to avoid confusion, I'll just say over here num1. I am not making use of the concatenation right now, otherwise you guys might get confused. So let me just show you the syntax for this. So I'll just say num1 is greater than num2. Okay. So if this condition is true, it will return this. Otherwise, if when we want to specify the else part, we make use of this colon. Okay. And here we will say num2 is greater than num1. Okay. So right now num1 is 5, num2 is 2. Is 5 greater than 2? This condition is true, so it will execute the part on the left hand side of the colon. Okay, or this, these two dots. And if this condition is false, it will execute whatever is on the right hand side of this colon operator, right? And collectively this is known as the ternary operator. This question mark and colon is known as the ternary operator. Okay, so instead of writing if and else, sometimes you can make use of this. And now if I modify the value of num2 to 10, and if I run the same statement once again, you can see it is returning num2 is greater than num1. So basically we can rewrite this exact if else from here using the ternary operator. Okay, so instead of using num1, we can once again say num1 plus is greater than plus num2. Okay, so even this concatenation is possible. Okay, just for the sake of simplicity, so that you guys understand the syntax, I had written it like this, but we can directly convert the if else into ternary operator syntax using this question mark and colon. Okay, all right. Since you can do if else, we can also write if else if else using the ternary operator as well. Okay, so what we will do right now, we want to rewrite this, right, using the ternary operator. So we will say num1 greater than num2. If this is true, we will just say num1 greater than num2. All right, then the next thing that we want to check is if num1 is less than num2. Okay, once again a question mark. We will say num1 is less than num2. Okay, and if this condition is false, and we have written a question mark over here, right, so we need a colon over here. And we this time, if even this is false, like number is neither greater nor is it less, that means both are equal, right? So right now num1 was 5 and num2 was 10. So 5 is less than 10. So it executed this piece of block. Suppose I make num1 equal to 10. So both of them are equal to 10. If I re-execute this code, it will return both numbers are equal. And once again, if I set num1 to hang on, so num1 and then num2, okay, so if I say num1 equals 12 for example, and then I execute this code, so since 12 is greater than 10, it is returning num1 is greater than num2. Okay, so this is how you can rewrite the if else using the ternary operator. Okay, is it clear to you guys? What we'll do is we'll just take a really short break now of 5 minutes. And you guys can let me know if you're finding it interesting, whether you're understanding JavaScript. Are you able, I mean, are things making sense? Maybe not everything is clear, but are you getting it in bits and pieces? Okay, great. I am happy to see that things are clear to you guys. Yeah, we'll look into the triple equal to operator as well. Don't worry. All right, so it's clear to most of you guys, and there was a comment about React. First, we will be learning the basics, as I mentioned, and we will definitely be learning React as well. So don't worry, in due time, we will be getting there. Okay, by last part, you mean the ternary operator? Okay, so so basically, the ternary operator consists of question mark and colon, right? So on the left hand side of the question mark comes the condition. Okay, right? If the condition is true, whatever is on this side, okay, to the left of the column, that is executed. Okay, so this is your if block. All right, if we look at the if and else statement, this is your if block, and whatever is on the right hand side, this is your else block. All right, so if the condition is true, this piece of code will get executed. If the condition is false, whatever is on the right hand side of colon, that will get executed. All right, and similarly, when we write if else, so basically what we will have is, instead of this else part, we will have else if over here. Okay, So another condition will come over here. Since we are defining a condition, we need to add a question mark. Okay, now once again we have defined a condition. If the condition is true, then whatever is on the left of the colon, that will be returned. If this condition is false, then whatever is on the right of the colon, that will be returned. Okay, so this is our if, this is our else if, and then this is our else. Okay, all right. So far we have looked at if, else if, and ternary operator. There is another variation known as the switch case. Okay, so switch basically accepts some value. Let's do one thing. Let's say it accepts some variable. Okay, so we define, just you remember the syntax right now. It might not make sense to you right now, but we'll be covering this when we learn about functions. Okay, so we have switch, it is accepting some value, and then over here we have case. Okay, so for example, I want to print the days of the week. Okay, so I have, for example, case as 1. Okay, when this number equals 1. Okay, actually what I will do is first let me show you the if else version of this. So suppose I have if number equals 1. Okay, this is the equality. It will check whether this number is equal to this value. Okay, if number equals 1, I want to say console.log Sunday. Okay, similarly, if I have if num equals to, I will say console.log Monday. All right, similarly I can have multiple else if statements. Okay, num equals 3, I will say console.log Tuesday, and so on. Okay, so you understand, right? We will have 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the last day would be Saturday. All right, so I'll just say console.log Saturday. Okay, and let me just copy this and let me define a variable num equals 1, for example. Then we have this, let me paste that piece of code. Okay, and you can see num1 equals 1, so it is printing Sunday. Okay, so I would have had a case for each one of these, 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the last value would be coming in the else part. Okay, so this is how, suppose you wanted to print the days of the week. Okay, so now if num is equal to 3, for example, and we execute this code, it is giving us the value as Tuesday. Suppose I wanted to rewrite all of this, we can do so using something known as the switch case. All right, so I'll say switch here. Instead of here we pass some variable, for example, day of the week. Okay, this is the name of a variable that I'm defining, and then case 1. Okay, like how we are saying 1 2 3, so instead of saying num equals to 1, we'll just say case 1, and then we'll say colon, and then here we will say console. Let me just copy this to save time. Console.log Sunday, and since we want to end this statement, we will make use of a special statement known as break. Okay, we want to break out of this case. This is the syntax of a switch case statement. When case equals 2, we will have console.log Monday. Okay, like this, and then we will have a break statement, and similarly case 3. So for case 3 we will log Tuesday, and we will break out of this, and instead of having this else, which is the or rather we have covered all of the days, right? 1 2 3, so case 1 case 2 case 3 up till case 7. If none of these values are correct, okay, we have something known as the default. Okay, and we will just say console.log invalid input for day. Okay, so this is how you define a switch case, and it's saying day of the week is not defined, right? So I think for right now I'll just pass num over here. Okay, and if I execute this, since the value of num was 3, right, it went inside this case and it printed Tuesday. Now suppose I execute this with instead of, say, suppose I execute this with the value 10. Okay, it is going inside the default clause because none of the cases are matching, so it is printing invalid input for the day. Okay, suppose I pass 2 over here, it is giving us the result as Monday. All right, so whatever value you specify over here, it will try and match that against the cases. Which of the cases satisfy this value or match this value, it will go inside that case and execute those statement. The difference is just in the way of defining things. So if you were to write this if else if compared to this way of writing, this is easier to read, right? So it depends from situation to situation. Okay, so this is just an alternative to rewriting the same thing. All right. Okay, so far we have covered all of the basic types of branching of flow control statements. Okay, generally code is executed line by line, but if you want something to get executed instead of the other, you can make use of if, else if, and all of these constructs which I have explained you so far. All right, now let's look at the next thing known as loops. Okay, whenever we want to do something repetitively, we make use of loops. So the first loop we will be looking at is the while loop. So the syntax for that is while condition is true, opening curly brackets, do something, okay, or execute that piece of code till this condition is true, okay, and we close the curly brackets over here. So this is the syntax. Now let's uh, try this out. So let's create a variable. So let index equals 1. Suppose we want to print 10 numbers, okay, starting from 1. So we'll say while our condition is index less than equal to 10. So initially index will be equal to 1 and it will start with 1. We want to just print this value in the console. So console.log index, okay, and once this statement has been executed, we want to add the index value by 1. So we'll say index plus plus, or we can say index plus equals 1. All right, and we close the while loop. Now let's execute this. So you can see it has printed 1 2 3 4 5 6 up till 10. So initially index was equal to 1. So is 1 less than equal to 10? So it will print it. Then we added 1 to index. So now index is equal to 2. So once again it executed this condition. Is 2 less than 10? It will check this condition. If it is satisfying this condition, it will come inside this condition and execute this statement. So once again it will increment. Is 3 less than equal to 10? It is true. Then it will add this and we go on like this. Then it will come to 10, right? Then actually it will come to 9. Then we will check is 9 greater than less than equal to 10. So it will then print 9. Then it will add 1 to 9. So 9 plus 1 equals 10. Is 10 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is less than and or equal to 10, right? So this condition is true. Next time it will execute this. So 10 plus 1 equals 11. Is 11 less than equal to 10? So it becomes false. It will not execute this piece of block. So we have all the values printed from 1 to 10 like this, okay. Is it clear? Okay, then the next thing is known as the do while loop, okay. The difference between the two is we look at the syntax first. So do, so we have, let's set index equal to 1, okay, do opening block, and we have our statements over here, do something, right? And here we will say console.log index, right? So we want to print the value of index, and then we will add the index by 1. So we'll say index plus plus, and then we will close our do block, and then we will write while index is less than or equal to 10, okay. If I execute this, we get the same output, 1 2 3 4 5 6 and up till 10, okay. So the difference between the two is that this piece of code will get executed at least once, all right, because it is executing this piece of code first and then checking the condition. So let's make a slide modification, or let's check the value of index now. Once it has executed this entire loop, index has been set to 11, right? Now if I rerun this entire do while loop, we should see the value 11 printed once, because it will first execute this piece of code and then actually check the condition, okay. So if I run this, you can see that 11 is being printed, right? So that is the difference. In case of while loop, if this value was set to let me just re-execute the code for while, right? If I run this now, index is equal to 11, it will first check the condition. Since the condition itself failed, it did not execute this piece of block. So that's the difference between while and do while. Okay. Now, a simpler way of writing these two loops is the for loop. Okay. So the way it works is we have the declaration, right? So where we were writing let index equal to 1, so that is known as the declaration. So declaration part comes, then we add a semicolon, then our condition. Okay, for example, over here our condition was index is less than equal to 10, and the updating of the variable that you're declaring here, so either increment or decrement or some sort of operation which basically updates the initial value. So index plus plus or index plus equal to 1 will come over here. Okay, updation part will come over here. Okay, now let's rewrite the same example using the for loop. So what we will do is, let me just quickly refresh this, right? And let's keep this here for reference. So we will say for let index equal to 1, okay, index less than equal to 10, and then index plus plus or index plus equals 1. Okay, this is our condition, the increment or the update part. Okay, so this is our declaration, this is the condition, and whatever we had written earlier, we have compressed it into a single line using the for loop. And then we will write console.log index. Okay, and we close our for loop. If we execute this, you can see 1 2 3 4 5 6 up to 10. So basically this value was assigned, this condition was checked. Since this condition was true, it logged the value to the console. Once it came out of the block, it added the index by 1, and then now index is equal to 2. Then it checks the condition, 2 is less than 10. Since this condition is true, it will come inside the block, print this, and we will come all the way up to 10. Once the value 10 has been printed, it will increment this. Now is 11 less than equal to 10, this condition becomes false, so it will not execute this. All right, so this is how the for loop works. Let's take another example. What we will do is we'll create a string, let text equals Devsnest. Okay, suppose we want to print the characters of this string one by one, so we will make use of a for loop. We'll say let index equals, for example, we start with 0, okay, and index is less than text. Okay, this text, since this is of string type, it has a special property on it known as the length. Okay, let me show that to you first. Text dot length, for example, the length property, right? Since this is an object, we can access certain features using the dot operator, and it has a property known as the length, which gives us the length of this string. So the length of this string is 8. So let's come back to our loop. Okay, so we are checking if we're starting with 0. Okay, let's start with 1 instead, and let's change this to less than equal to text.length. So we start with the first character, and we check if so we want to print all of the characters in this string, right? So we need to start from the first character up till the last character. So the length gives us the total number of characters, right? So from the first till the eighth character we need to loop, and we will increment the index, right? So we'll say index plus plus, and we'll say console.log text, right, dot char at. Now char at is a function which is available on this string, right? And it accepts values starting from 0. So the first character would be at the 0th position. Okay, it is something in JavaScript that whenever we are trying to access the index of certain variables, they start with 0. All right, so since we are starting with 1, we will just say index minus 1. Okay, or if you guys are getting confused with this, we'll just switch it back to 0, and we'll just say index is less than text.length. So when I say 0, it basically indicates the first character. When we are at 1, it indicates the second character. Okay, so we will just print the character at that index. All right, and then we will close it. So one by one it will print the characters present inside this string. So let's execute this. So you can see it printed D. Okay, EVSNEST. Okay, and once the condition was false, it did not go inside this loop, right? So it started from 0 and went all the way up till 7, right? 0 to 7 is 8. Okay, and then once this became 8, is 8 less than text.length, which is 8, so this condition became false, so it would not go inside this loop. Okay, so this is another example of how we can loop through the characters in a string using the for loop. Okay, we have another data structure which is available to us known as arrays, okay, in JavaScript. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to define collections. Okay, for example, collection of numbers. So it allows us to define collection of similar data types. It can be a collection of numbers, or you can imagine a collection. Instead of using the word collection, we can say list as well. A list of numbers, a list of strings, a list of user defined objects, right? Or user defined data types such as objects. Okay, or a collection of booleans, true false values. So let's look at some of the examples. So for example, I will define an array fruits. Okay, and we have fruits. So the way you create an array is you make use of this square bracket, and let's create some fruits: apple, orange, and kiwi. So this is a list or a collection of multiple strings, right? So far we were storing only a single value in a variable. When we need to store multiple of these values together, we can make use of something known as an array, right? Now if we look at fruits, it is now holding all of these values. Okay, now you might be wondering, suppose I am interested in just this value, right? So how do I access it? Now arrays is a data structure which works with indexes, right? In order to access its values, you need to make use of indexes, and the indexes start with 0. Okay, so if I want to access the first item, okay, this is known as an item, this is known as the second item, and the third item. Okay, so individually these are known as items of an array. So if I want to access the first item, now since these are index based, what I can say is fruits. I make use of the square bracket and I specify the index. So the first item starts at the 0th index, and I close this square bracket. So this is how I'm accessing an individual item within the array. All right, if I want to access the next item, so I will say fruits at index 1. Okay, and similarly when I want to access the third, I can say like this, fruits at index 2. Okay, so this is how you access the individual values within an array. Is this clear to you guys? How do we define an array? Let's take a look at another example. So const numbers equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, and you specify multiple values and using the comma, you separate individual values using the comma. Okay, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, whatever. All right, so this is an array of numbers. Now just like the string, this has a property known as the length, which gives us the count of number of items in this array. Okay, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the length is 7, and these are the indexes which I was talking about, right? So at the 0th index we have 1, at the first index we have the value 2, and so on up till 6. At the last index, 6, the last index, we have the value 20, right? Okay, now suppose I want to modify a value. All right, so I'll say let abc equals, for example, 1, 5, and 7. This is an array of numbers. Suppose I want to modify the second item in the array and replace it with the value 2. Do you guys have any idea how we can do that? You can let me know in the comments. The question is, we have seen how to access these individual values, right? So if you're interested in the first value, you can use the 0th index, in the second one like this, and so on for the third one. Now suppose I want to modify the second item in the array. Instead of 5, I want to show, so instead of 1, 5, and 7, okay, like this, I want to replace 5 with 1, 3, and 7. So basically I want to change the second item's value to 3. How can I do that? That is the question. Okay, so some of you guys are correct in the chat. So I will say ABC at the second index. Sorry, not the second index. Since this is 0, this is 1, and then this is 2. So ABC at first index. So this is giving us the value 5. I want to modify this, right? So I'll say equal to 3. Okay, I want to replace the second item with 3. And now if I look at ABC, okay, we can see that the second item at the first index, or the second item's value has been replaced with 3. So now it says 1, 3, and 7. Okay, so To read the value, you do it like this, and to modify it, you just make use of the assignment operator and you assign the new value to it. Okay, so is this clear to you guys? So in JavaScript, it's not that an array can just be of similar data types. You can have a string, you can have a number, you can have a boolean as well. So even this is valid. Okay, the list can be of different data types as well. Even this is possible, but generally we do not come across such use cases where we need to have different data types inside an array. All right, since JavaScript can hold dynamic types, it allows it, but generally such a use case does not arise. Generally we deal with a list of numbers or a list of strings like this. Okay, all right, now let's look at how to go over the individual items of an array using loops. Okay, so suppose I have this numbers, right, and I want the sum of all the numbers in this array. So what I will do is we'll write a for loop. We'll say index equals 0, right? We want to start with the first item which is available in the array and go up till this one. Okay, we want to access all of these elements or items of the array one by one and add them. Okay, so before this, let's create a variable let sum, which will store the sum of all the numbers. Okay, so sum is equal to 0. Then we have the condition index is less than numbers dot length. Okay, this tells us the number of items in the array, and we'll say index plus plus like this. And what we want is we want to store the sum, right? So sum is either you can say equals sum plus numbers, right? We want to access individual numbers which are there in the array, so we will make use of the index over here. We will pass the index like this, right? So index starts at 0 and it will go all the way up till the length of the array. Okay, length of the array less than 1 less than the length of the array, since we're using the less than condition, right? So if the length of this array is 8, we will start from 0 and go up till 7. Okay, so using this we are able to access that individual element or item within the array and add it to the previous sum. Either we can write it like this, or we can just say sum plus equals numbers at that particular index. All right, and then we close the loop. So as we saw earlier, initially index will be equal to 0, so we will access the first item. Then when index, then it will execute the statement, store it in the sum, increment the counter by 1. Once again it will check the condition is 1 less than whatever is the length. If that condition is true, then we will access the next item, and so on. We will keep on accessing all the items and add it to the previous value of the sum. So let's execute this now. So we can see that the sum is 45. Okay, so if we do 1 plus 2, that is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, 15 plus 10 is 25, and 25 plus 20 is 45. So we are getting the correct result. Okay, so we are not adding the numbers, right? We are accessing the, so if I want to access the first number, I will say numbers at index 0, right? So my index starts at 0 and will go all the way up till, let's just check the length of numbers, it is 7, right? So it will go all the way up till 7. Okay, so one by one it will access all of the items in the array. Okay, so numbers at index 0, then numbers at index 1, and so on up till numbers at index, sorry, it will start from 0, and since the length was 7, it will start from 0 and go all the way up till 6. So 6 indicates the last item, right? So it will just add these. So numbers at index 0, so it's something like this internally when the code is getting executed. Numbers of 0 plus numbers at index 1, and so on up till numbers at index 6. Okay, and whatever is the result, we are adding it one by one to this sum variable. Okay, this is how you can loop through the individual items of an array. Okay, then let's do one thing. Let's look at how we can, so whenever we are creating an array, we can remove items which have been added to the array or add the items to the array. So whenever you want to, suppose we have this numbers array, right? We want to add another number to this list. Okay, so we'll say numbers dot push, and the updated value, suppose I want to add 25, so I will specify 25 over here. And now once again, if I examine numbers, you can see after 20, now it has this new value 25, and the length has even increased from 7 to 8. Okay, suppose I want to add multiple numbers, I can do that as well. So I can add, say, 45, 9, 11. So if I want to add multiple values, I can separate the values individually using comma. If I do this, it will add 3 numbers to this existing array. So whenever I want to add something, I can make use of the push function. Okay, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 25, 45, 9, and 11. Now suppose I want to get rid of an element, right? The last element which I've added, so I can just simply call array.pop. This is a function which allows us to remove the last added item. Okay, so if I say pop, the 11 was the last item to be added, so it just removes that. Now if I look at numbers, the length has reduced by 1, the length is 10, and we no longer see the value 11. If I pop another item, so the previous last element, which was 9, it has been removed. If we look at numbers now, it is up to 45, right? So the pop function returns, updates the array, removes that item, and also returns the value which was removed. So 9 was the value which was removed, right? Okay, let's see, let's do one thing. So we have this numbers array, right? And what we want to do is filter out the even numbers and the odd numbers. So we will create a new array, even numbers, that was equal to an empty array like this, and let odd numbers, which is another empty array, like this. And we want to go through all the items, right? So let's look at okay, we'll come. So far we have looked at the traditional for loop, right, which has this index, and then there is some we create a variable, we check the condition, and we either update add or increment or decrement that variable. All right, so there is another way of doing this, which is known as the for of loop. So we'll make use of that now. For of loop, which is another variation of the for loop which is provided in JavaScript. So what we will say is for let number of numbers, right? So we are creating a new variable known as num, and we are going through all the numbers which are available in this numbers array, right? So let num of numbers, and what we want to do is we will check if the number is even or odd, right? So in order to check that, so this num variable we don't have to make use of that index plus or minus. When we use this syntax, it automatically increments the values for us one by one. So whatever is the first item, it will be assigned to num first, and then this piece of code will get executed. Once this statement has been executed, it will internally increment the index and assign the next value to the variable num. Okay, or rather we can say let index of num. Let's not use index over here. Let's just say num. Okay, I mean this is equivalent of saying num is something like this. Num is equal to numbers at that index. Okay, so index is initially 0, so the first item will be assigned to 1. When index is equal to 1, the second item will be assigned to num. Now instead of explicitly writing this, index is equal to 1 and let index equal to 1, index is less than whatever the length of the array, the for of loop allows us to directly write something like this. Okay, and then what we will check is if that number is divisible by 2. Okay, this is the modulo operator. It will check whether it's the remainder operator. Basically, if any number is even, if it is divisible by 2, right, completely divisible by 2, that means it will leave a remainder of 0, right? So if this condition is true, we will say even numbers dot push the number. All right, otherwise this condition is false. That means we will add this to the odd numbers. So odd numbers dot push number. All right, okay, so using this we'll be going through all of the numbers in the list one by one. We will check if that particular number is completely divisible by 2. So if it is completely divisible by 2, it should leave a remainder of 0. Okay, so if num modulo 2, modulo basically returns us the remainder, right? So for example, 2 divided by 2 gives us the remainder of 0, right? Whereas 5 divided by 2 gives us a remainder of 3, right? So if it is not equal to 0, if it is not completely divisible by 0, it will add that number to the even numbers array, and if it is not divisible, it will save it in the odd numbers. Okay, so let's execute this and let's look at even numbers. Okay, and let's look at the odd numbers now. Okay, so you can see 2, 4, 10 and 20 were the even numbers, and 1, 3, 5, 25 and 45 are the odd numbers, right? If we look at the entire numbers array, so we were able to create individual arrays out of this array. Okay, so we created 2 empty arrays and we pushed the values, right? So just to check, 5 mod 2, so sorry, I was wrong, right? So it is giving us the remainder 1. So 2 times 2 is 4, so it leaves us a remainder of 1. Okay, then 2 completely divides 2, so it is giving us the remainder 0, right? And 7, or rather 9 divided by 2 gives us the remainder ones, right? So 9 is an odd number, it is not divisible by 2 completely, so it's giving us the remainder 1. So it will always give us the remainder 0 when ever it's completely divisible by 2. So that is why that number is even. So we are adding it to this array. Otherwise, we add it to the odd number array, right? So is this syntax clear to you guys? The for off loop. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's just syntactic sugar on top of the index based for loop. Okay, you don't have to write a lot of, increment and decrement or check the length. You don't need to go, add any condition. It does all of that part behind the scenes. All it does is that it goes through each item of the array, assigns it to whatever variable name that you have specified over here, and then you can write your logic over here. Okay, so we could have written the same thing using the traditional for loop, but even this allows us to do the same thing. Okay, so like we have the for off loop, we have the for in loop as well. Let's take a look of that. So for in, okay, so for let index in numbers, right? And console dot log, if we just log the index, what do you think is going to be the output? It's just printing all the indexes 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 up till 8. Okay, and if we want to access the value, individual value within the number array, so we'll just say numbers, and we will pass the index within the square brackets. And now instead of printing the indexes, it will print the actual values. Okay, so this is the for in loop. Okay, here it's giving us the access to the index of the arrays directly, and in the for off loop we were getting access to the values of the array directly. So that is the difference between the two. So both of them have their different use cases. You will know which one to use based on the problem that you're trying to solve. Okay, all right. I think we have covered quite a lot of things today. Just one last thing. So we have this even numbers array, right? And we have these odd numbers array. Suppose we want to concatenate both of these arrays together or merge them into a single array. So we can do so using a function which is available on the array object. Okay, even array is an object, right? So we will say array dot concat odd numbers. So it will basically join both of these arrays together. When I execute the statement, you can see these two arrays have been merged into a single array. Okay, all right, so you can merge arrays using the concatenate function. Similarly, we can remove or split the array as well. So there's something known as suppose we want to split the numbers. So numbers dot slice, we want to start from 0 and we want to suppose slice up till so 0 1 2 3 4 up till here. Okay, so it'll say 0 comma 4, so it will just extract those items. Okay, right? let's look at the numbers array. Sorry, I was looking at this array. I should have looked at the numbers array. So the numbers array has all of these elements. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we specified the starting point and the end point. Okay, so it went from 0, 1, 2, 3, and up till 4. So 4 is excluded. So this is the range starting from 0 up till the fourth one, but the fourth element is excluded, right? The item at the fourth index is excluded. So it got the 4 items. Similarly, if we want to start at the suppose we want to start from here, right? So 0, so this is the fourth index, right? So numbers dot slice, we'll start at the fourth one and we'll go up till numbers dot length. Okay, so you can see it started from here and up till the end of the array. So we specified the the starting point and the ending point. So this is how you can split two arrays using the slice method. Okay, yeah, you can do negative indexing as well. So for example, you want to just get the last element. Okay, so we start with 0 and we want to get the last element, which is 45. So we'll just say -1 like this. Hang on, actually this included all of the items. So if I just say -1 like this, it is giving me the last item. If I say -2, it is giving me the last 2 items. If I say -3, it's giving me the last 3 items. Okay, so that is how you can use the negative indexes as well. Okay, so I think we have covered quite a lot of topics today. Let's do a quick recap. We learned about the different data types which are available in JavaScript, how to create different types of variables using var, let, and const. Then we looked at the operators which are available to us, plus, minus, and the conditional operators, greater than, less than. Then we looked at the different statements, if else, ternary operator, switch statements, loops, while loops, for loops, and so on. We looked at arrays, how to traverse through the array, access elements of an array, add items to an array, remove elements from an array, join two arrays, and split two arrays. Okay, there are many more methods available on the arrays. We'll look at them in the future, and tomorrow we'll be looking at functions and DOM manipulation. Okay, so this was to just get you started with JavaScript, make you understand what are the features available, how you can write code in JavaScript, how you can write statements, how you can write conditions, how you can loop through items, how you can define variables, just the basics. So that was the intention for this session. From tomorrow onwards, we'll start playing around with adding interactivity within our website using JavaScript, and we'll be building on HTML and our CSS knowledge as well. Okay, all right, so this is it for this session. I will see you guys tomorrow, and right after this session we will be meeting in Discord, the voice channel Mahasabha. You can ask me your doubts over there. Right, so see you guys and we'll meet tomorrow.